Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Snow Melts and Until It Falls Again. This is the White Album 2 official side story taking place before the events of the introductory chapter. So, starting and continuing from the last episode, basically, Haruki had given Kazusa a book. It was an English grammar book for middle schoolers as a gift, and told her that he really needed to focus on studying rather than playing the guitar for the tests. This made Kazusa super angry, and she ended up blowing a whole bunch of her family's money in a desperate attempt to block it out of her mind. However, she lost the book and spent the entire night up until something like 3 a.m. walking around in the rain, desperately searching for this book. She ended up falling, scraping her entire body except her hands, which she protected, and then found the book. Moving on to the next day, let's continue. The next day. The moment Kazusa reached the classroom, she flopped down on her desk and didn't budge. Listen, Touma, about yesterday? Don't talk to me right now. The chairman, who seemed to have been looking for a chance to talk from the instant they met eyes in the room, was forced out of the initiative by this lightning-fast maneuver. About yesterday. About the reason for her anger, concerning which he had no clue. The common-sense conclusion, even if he had been in the wrong, that didn't make it okay to cut class. And his determination, timid and yet strong, to find a way to repair the relationship. Look, all I need is a minute. Will you listen to me? There was so much for him to tell her that he couldn't accept her rejection. So, as always, he continued to press her, knowing full well that it would make her hate him more. I'm sleepy. Next week. Huh? Of course she's sleepy. She was up till so late. Let me sleep today. Don't wake me up. Touma? And, surprisingly, she accepted it somewhat easily, albeit with conditions attached, in a manner that seemed like a sidestep, as though nothing had happened. To him, with all these extraordinary feelings he bore for her, it was too welcome a pain to be considered a draw. All right, sleep tight, Touma. Wait, you're really saying that? Oh, sleep tight, that's so cute. But he didn't know the truth. How significant it was that Kazusa was here right now. The dawn had broken by the time she returned home last night, or rather, this morning. That the instant she stepped out of the shower, she was swamped by relief, exhaustion, and sleep deficit all at once, such that a second's carelessness might lead her to collapse immediately. That the option to just pass out had flitted through her brain over and over. That the injuries all over her body ached with every step she took, and it took her half an hour longer than usual to reach the school. This girl is a mess. Can nobody see that? Can nobody tell she hasn't slept in 3 days? And she's cut up all over and stuff. She's injured. And that even after all of it, she just wanted to sleep peacefully next to someone today. Oh my God, she's such a lonely girl. And of course, that the someone next to her couldn't be just anyone. So he didn't know, and he probably never would. The great adventure undertaken last night by Kazusa, the faithful dog. Oh my God. And the fact that Kazusa always sleeps with the lights on, at least that's what they had mentioned in the story so far, is kind of telling. She does not want to sleep alone. And having the light on kind of makes it maybe feel like there's someone else in the house. 1 week later, the Hojo University Attached High School had happily finished its proficiency exams. And Kazusa Touma had received the lowest scores in all 5 subjects. I mean, we kind of expected that one anyway. The closed-off classroom had become more bearable than it had been in the summer, and one needed only to open the window to let in a more pleasant air. No AC necessary. With exams over, the clubs regained their former energy, and the school once more echoed with the familiar sounds of shouts and musical instruments. After looking down at the schoolyard for a while, taking the breeze concealed behind a curtain, Kazusa slowly stepped up to the piano and sat down with the same perfect posture as always. And, as always, she slowly began to play, waiting for 5 o'clock. Back to business as usual, I guess. Everything is the same, except Kazusa must really realize how crazy she is at this point. And I mean crazy about Haruki. I mean, she's a teeny bit unhealthily obsessed at this point, but it was early October, and dusk's approach was moving earlier and earlier. The first Tuesday since exams had ended, and the clubs regained their former energy. More specifically, just about 15 minutes after 5 p.m. Still shitty. Even though hardly a second had passed since she first heard the first sound, Kazusa was already appraising the performance. She had been waiting so adamantly that she didn't actually listen to what was being played. Yes, the guitar part from White Album was flowing in from the room next door. Kazusa's fingers responded more instantly than usual. The classical etude that she had just been playing shifted its rhythm, shifted its key, and quickly joined in with that dated pop tune. And, as though well accustomed by now, her neighbor immediately began to play comfortably, as though entrusting everything to her accompaniment. Perhaps the fairly standard song selection to begin was meant as a way of dispelling the pent-up frustration of not being able to practice recently, thanks to the exams. I mean, okay, I guess they probably don't want her practicing specifically. They might have actually said no practicing, because I can't imagine Kazusa holding off for anyone. The White Album that came drifting in on the wind for the first time in ages made it easy to imagine how much he was enjoying himself. Full of energy, lively and bright, mismatched and estranged from its lyrics that sang of difficult love. But today, instead of correcting and redirecting, Kazusa abandoned her perfectionism and went along with his pace, strength, and enjoyment. Just for today, this was fine. She could have fun. She could be happy. Just playing together was enough. As Kazusa raised her tempo to match his, he raised it even more. And when Kazusa ramped it up even higher, he did his utmost to keep up. It was clearly a debacle of a session, with way too much energy crammed in. A terrible performance, with none of the quality of the original song left. And yet, Kazusa's face was shining in a way that it never had before. This was so far different from normal. Oh, she's having fun. She's actually having fun. Even though she said, just for today, she can have fun, she could be happy. Music to my ears in more ways than one. She deserves this. Too fast, too strong, and yet not a single note was out of place. What was that about studying being your duty as a student? Damn liar. After a 2-week gap, Guitar Boy, Haruki Kitahara, had plainly improved his ability compared with before the exams. He still hadn't fixed his habits of getting carried away or being dragged along behind, but he was able to pick up the most important thing, the sounds. This was a skill that could not have been improved without daily practice, and one that could not be acquired without practicing it correctly from the very outset. Oh, so he was still practicing despite it all. And he didn't even throw that back in her face when she said you haven't been practicing. Which honestly he should have, because it might have resulted in not those horrible things happening. Kazusa not walking around in the rain at 3 a.m. because she was angry. But still, again, it's both their fault, as usual. Dumbass. You're just like me. Sounds are way more honest than words. You were practicing during the exam period too, weren't you? Even while you were studying, you thought about the guitar. You played it secretly, reading that book, not textbooks. That park, late at night in the rain, returned vividly to the back of Kazusa's mind. That single note tucked between the pages of the damp reference book. Oh, yay! We finally get to see what was in the note. I bought the guitar practice book you told me about. It's really easy to understand. I think I should be able to follow along. Thanks to you, I remembered that the most basic foundations are the most important thing. I really think this book will be the most useful to you. I'm the studying expert here, so try to take my word for it. The school festival and graduation aren't far off. We've both got work to do, so let's do it. Kitahara. Yay! That's so sweet. Also, that's really nice. He's admitting his own lack of progress, I guess, lack of skill, but also acknowledging that he can help Kazusa with hers. So, I mean, in essence, if you really, really read between the lines, they complete each other. They do. In this particular instance, they perfectly complete each other. They just can't reach each other. The Kaio Proficiency series? They're exercise books for complete beginners. Just what you need, Kitahara. Did you work your way up with these? No way. It was just pure genius for me. Oh. Yeah, right. I wasn't using the guitar one, but it definitely helped. You play something other than guitar? That's not relevant right now. Touma? Here, just play. I don't have all the time in the world. She had mentioned the title of this book any number of times that day during summer break, while she taught him about the guitar. Back when she had started the piano, in other words, as soon as she was old enough to have awareness of the world around her, Yoko had purchased the piano edition of this series and given it to her. Her mother had made the choice to give a book full of kanji to a 3-year-old child. But that cheeky daughter of hers, declaring herself a genius, took in all those symbols written there and understood perfectly. She's awesome. Kazusa's so smart if she actually tries. It's just the way she was raised, she wasn't given any incentive to try. Her reading comprehension, or sound comprehension really, was higher than that of anyone else in her age group. A true child prodigy. Those long ago lessons etched into her by Yoko Touma now tied themselves to reality. You screwed up. Too bad. The guitar player had finally made a mistake right at the very end, and Kazusa laughed with delight and scorn. That night, Kazusa went without sleep for the first time in a week. However, it wasn't because she was practicing the piano or getting lost in thought. And certainly not because she was studying. Obviously. Kazusa and study are never in the same sentence together unless the word doesn't is in the middle of them. She was, of all things, undertaking something that could quite fairly be called night work. Sewing. The object at hand was the stuffed dog from her drawer. The birthday present that Yoko had sent her 2 years ago. Oh, wow. She's come a long way to be trying to fix that. This emblem of the rupture between mother and child, torn up and then neglected ever since. Kazusa worked tirelessly to stitch up the damage that she herself had caused. This is really symbolic. She wants to fix things. She wants to have the power to maintain relationships with other people. She wants to fix her relationships with others. This is a huge first step for her. At first, she'd pricked herself a number of times, unaccustomed to handling a needle, but her piano-trained fingers quickly found the knack, steadily picking up her pace, and her stitches became cleaner. Even so, Kazusa controlled her pace whenever it started to run too high, warned herself against getting too carried away, and sewed carefully, attentively, trying to keep the stitches as small and hard to see as possible. It wasn't that she'd forgiven her mother, thank goodness, because honestly, she's far off from getting forgiveness. Nor that she had accepted the world. But this stuffed animal, this dog, had done nothing wrong. And Kazusa herself absolutely had done wrong. Oh. So Kazusa is so used to taking out her anger on others, taking out her pain and anguish on others. And she's realizing now that obviously they didn't do anything wrong. And she did. Because even though she's been horribly mistreated, that doesn't give you the right to mistreat others. So, really mature of her to think that way. The newly sewn up stuffed toy was slightly crooked. But that misshapenness actually resonated with her all the more. It was like a loyal dog that kept on wagging its tail, even though its feelings never reached its master. Okay, pretty much Kazusa then. So after making sure of how much time there was before school, Kazusa lay with it in her arms for half an hour. It seemed warm somehow as she held it. Okay, I'm leaving. And exactly 30 minutes later, Kazusa tucked her copy of Chlorophyll Publishing's Sprout Series number 16, Foundational English Grammar, next to her faithful dog's chest, addressed the two of them briefly, and left her room. It was the first greeting she had given aloud in almost 2 years. Man, the first greeting in almost 2 years, it really just goes to show how lonely she is. It really just goes to show. That's horrible. That is not good for a growing person, for an adolescent. The moment she stepped out of the house, she narrowed her eyes in the downpour of sunlight. The autumnal sky wasn't as painful as the summer had been, but as mild as it was, after staying up almost all night, Kazusa wished it would go a little easier on her. I don't want to go to school, really. Until now, or at least until last year, she would never have shown up at school on a day like this. But now her body didn't listen to the grumbling of her mouth, and it took her with a steady gait straight to the station. And her heart felt something comfortable in her body's self-willed response. Too much work. Her mouth, having been left behind, continued attempting to return fire with its retorts, but there was no one within her to engage it. A clear autumn sky stretched out above Kazusa. Kazusa Touma had never really hated the sky. I got goosebumps reading that. Oh my God, what a beautiful line. She never really hated the sky. She always took out her anger on other things. She always misdirected her pain, even if it was something as dumb as the sky. She didn't hate the sky. She just hated the fact that she was abandoned and left behind. And I'm so proud of her for finally realizing that, so she can finally start working on things and moving forward. That is a huge, huge step for her. So we will stop off there for today. So thank you so much for being here with me on this chapter of the White Album 2 side story, and I'll be back with the next chapter shortly. So until then, hope you take care. See you.